That's right. That snare drum time used to mean Score North Gophers show time. However, I'm not sure I used this last year, but I'm using it as the annual music for the Bowl Bonanza with Mr. Daniel House, who you can already see on screen from gophersguru.com. Mr. Daniel House, he is at Daniel House MN on the X machine. This is a departure from your normal Minnesota sports chat, somewhere in the mid 240s for edition. I didn't even look that up. This edition, Mr. Daniel House and I will whip around all of college football, in which I will give complete non sequiturs and nonsense, and Daniel House will give you all the good information on all the bowl games to come, including one already played. Daniel, we did this last year. We whipped around incredibly quickly, and we had very minimal mistakes. There were mistakes, but very minimal. I think we changed our best. We came back this year. We're feeling elite, and we'll see how we do. I'm not beyond believing there won't be an issue or two, but I think we'll work through. We have 39 games to whip through. We're going to do the first 4 of the college football playoff and the other 35 bowl games, as mentioned, including that one that already happened over the weekend. How you feeling, Daniel? Did you get some calisthenics in over the last week or two to prepare for this? Are you feeling good about this college football whip around Bowl Bonanza where we preview every single bowl game?
I feel good. The hardest part is all the roster movement and coaching movement makes it hard to project these games. You could get 3 days before and have a whole bunch of people leave. So bear with us here as we try to keep tabs on everything. I feel like I'm up to speed, but every day, every minute is changing as we navigate a new landscape here.
I think all these games should be dealt with a grain of salt because we know that there's going to be plenty of changes. You'll hear that when we get to a bowl game with a team announced that is no longer playing in the game. Also, Penn State affected by their, you can call him backup quarterback, but more of a change of pace backup quarterback who definitely plays a lot, opting out and transferring out of Penn State. So even the college football playoff teams have been affected. That absolutely needs to be fixed at some point. I'm hopeful that it will, but that is neither here nor there. It is our duty. It is our obligation to rise up and give you all the bowl game and first round playoff matchups. Shall we do it, Mr. Daniel House from Gophers Guru and Daniel House MN on the X machine? Should we get to it?
Let's go.
All right, let's start with a very quick review of the IS4S Salute to Veterans Bowl. You'll notice on some of these, Daniel, I shorten them because the sponsors should always come after the bowl game. I'm so sick of the sponsor name. Always. Sorry, Common. Here we go.
The IS4S Salute to Veterans Bowl. South Alabama versus Western Michigan.
I will point out, Daniel House, I am 1-0. 1-0. That was very Minnesotan. 1-0 in bowl picks so far this year. I did have South Alabama, who was down their starting quarterback and number 1 receiver, but their talent appears to have outweighed the talent on the Western Michigan football team.
Let's go, baby.
Are you ready for the real ones?
I'm ready for the real ones.
All right, let's go. What was the final score? Do you know of that game? 20? No, it was more than that.
It was weird how that
23.
game came
30 to 23.
It came on so late. I was surprised. It was like 8 o'clock kick for that game after the Heisman.
Well, we had Army Navy, in which Navy predictably beat Army. I also felt like that was going to happen because Army had played the week before. Navy didn't. And then earlier on in the day, we have the Celebration Bowl where Jackson State beat, was it Georgia State? I don't remember who they played.
Yeah.
No, Georgia.
Yep.
Is it Georgia?
No, South
State?
Carolina State.
South Carolina State. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So we got the salute. We're off to a great start here. We got the Salute to Veterans Bowl out of the way. And let's move on. Let's start whipping through these games, okay? We'll start with
Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Memphis versus West Virginia.
So I look at this, Daniel, and I see a Memphis team taking on West Virginia that I think is just one of the classes of the AAC. And I really don't think West Virginia out of the Big 12 is all that good. I'm going to go ahead and take Memphis to earn their 11th victory. What do you have for a preview on this game?
First coaching change here, Neil Brown out, Chad Scott, interim coach for West Virginia. I look at early down efficiency being the difference in this game. West Virginia is struggling on early downs while Memphis is good in this category. I'm taking Memphis. I like Seth Hennigan as a quarterback. I think he's underappreciated, very accurate, good decision maker. Memphis has got a good roster built with strong productivity and good usage of the transfer portal. Felt like they were really close to kind of potentially having a breakout season to be in the mix as one of those group of 5 teams challenging, but just it never really fully came together, which that can happen when you use the portal. So I'm taking Memphis. I think their roster is better than West Virginia's.
Quietly a very nice uniform matchup if Memphis wears their best. West Virginia always has pretty decent uniforms. We move on to bowl game number 3.
The Boca Raton Bowl. Western Kentucky versus James Madison.
A Conference USA versus Sun Belt matchup. Western Kentucky 8-5, James Madison 8-4. Daniel House, I view this game as a little bit of a toss-up because I think the Conference USA and Sun Belt fairly comparable when you look at schedules and competition. If I had to guess, I would go Western Kentucky, both teams coming off of disappointing losses in their conference championship games.
I'm going the opposite here. We're going to differ with James Madison taking down Western Kentucky. All over the map this year for Western Kentucky, varying results. James Madison's quietly put together a really efficient and disruptive defense with Bob Chesney in his first year. Bob Chesney will be rising up fast in the coaching business. Looking at their defense, just limiting productive drives, knocking offenses off schedule, stopping the run well. I think they can control this game, dictate the flow. Those variables, they'll be the difference. James Madison comes out with a W against Western Kentucky.
We should monitor how many we're different on just for fun. If you want to somehow make note of that,
Okay,
that would be kind of fun to pay attention to. Some of these I have made picks in a separate competition. I don't always remember the picks that I made, so for my family and friends who are listening, I'm not intentionally trying to throw anybody off. I could just be misremembering. We move on to bowl game number 4.
The Art of Sport LA Bowl. Cal versus UNLV.
I think this is an interesting matchup. You have a really good non-Power 4 team taking on a team out of the Power 4 with California, who finished 6-6. If you're a Gopher fan, that is a future Minnesota opponent, game 3 next year. UNLV finishes the year 10-3. They lost in the Mountain West title game to Boise State. Didn't put up a ton of a fight, but I think we all believe Boise State's a pretty darn good football team, with Boise's only loss to number 1 Oregon, and I believe they lost on a last-second field goal. UNLV, by the way, has a strong season after their quarterback left them, I think, after game 4 of the season over an NIL dispute. I think this game could be pretty darn interesting. I'm going to take the new Fighting Dan Mullins and UNLV to win this football game. What say you, Daniel House?
Well, I was just down in Vegas, out by the UNLV campus, could feel the vibe. Coaching change with Barry Odom going to Purdue, so being interim coach. CJ Harris is expected to start for Cal with Fernando Mendoza in the portal. I think UNLV's go-go offense will be the X factor in this game. Lots of tempo, run game creativity, cool RPO stuff. Cal's a middle-of-the-pack run defense, and on the other side, they're inconsistent running the football. So with all that said, I'm picking UNLV, running Rebels. Let's go.
The R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Georgia Southern versus Sam Houston.
Georgia Southern comes in at 8-4, and we have Sam Houston State at 9-3. This is a Sun Belt versus Conference USA matchup. Georgia Southern out of the Fun Belt. Conference USA's representative is Sam Houston State. Georgia Southern at 8-4, Sam Houston State at 9-3. This game, Daniel House, feels like a game that could be high scoring and a little bit back and forth.
Yes, Brad Cornelson will be coaching the game in relief of Casey Keeler, who was hired at Temple. Georgia Southern's defense has been a disaster this year, but Sam Houston's missing a lot of guys. Have a feeling this is going to be a high-scoring game, like you said, but I'm giving the edge to Georgia Southern.
Great. I believe that is also my pick, but I don't know because they're not in front of me, so we move on.
The Staff DNA Cure Bowl. Ohio versus Jacksonville State.
Ohio will be down their head football coach, and I believe Jacksonville State also down their head football coach because Rich Rod went on to, who says you can't go home again? Rich Rodriguez back to West Virginia. And did Ohio's coach take the UAB job?
No, he took Charlotte.
Charlotte? Close.
Yep.
I was close. I was in the right region.
Color scheme.
Ohio and same color scheme. There we go. Ohio goes 10-3, winning the MAC. Jacksonville State 9-4 out of the Conference USA. Again, a little bit of an interesting matchup for the college football sickos.
It is, and coaching changes, 2 of them. That's the case on a lot of these matchups, and those lower level teams losing a lot of players. Tim Albin hired at Charlotte, OC Brian Smith taking over for Ohio. Ohio's been efficient running and throwing the football, quietly a pretty well-coached football team. I can see why Albin got hired. Jacksonville State has a solid early downs defense. Ohio's good in that category. So I'd say the differentiating factor is Ohio runs the ball better, so I'm giving them the edge. Ohio Bobcats in the W.
The Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Tulane versus Florida.
Tulane 9-4, Florida 7-5. I think this is a really good matchup between an SEC school and Florida that I don't want to say found themselves, but once they announced that Billy Napier was coming back, I think played fairly good football down the stretch. Tulane has turned into a pretty nice football program that routinely is competing to win 10 games a season regardless of the coach. I like Florida in this one, but I could be talked into Tulane.
Ty Thompson starting the bowl game. Darian Mensah, the quarterback, transferred to Duke, so you got a variable there that you're not really sure about. I really like John Summerall as a coach, what he's building. Think he'll be elevating up. Probably will have the Kentucky job eventually when Stoops is out there. Tulane's been really efficient all year on both sides of the ball. I think the difference in this game when you're watching this one is Tulane's rushing attack versus Florida's run defense. That's going to be the difference. I'm taking Tulane. I'm riding that green wave. W for Tulane.
I love it.
The Myrtle Beach Bowl. Coastal Carolina versus UTSA.
2 6-6 football teams in this one. 1 out of the Sun Belt, 1 out of the American. What say you, Daniel House of GophersGuru.com?
This is a game that won't be for defensive purists like myself. UTSA's defense gives up a lot of big plays on the ground. I'm going with Coastal Carolina. High-scoring affair with limited defense. Cover your eyes if you love defensive football.
The famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Northern Illinois versus Fresno State.
I feel like back in the day, Boise State used to always be in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Then there was a different name, and then it was the Humanitarian Bowl for the longest time. But since Boise State elevated their play to not be at the Idaho Bowl, whatever you want to call it, I feel like Northern Illinois is there almost every other year. They're back again, taking on Fresno State. Northern Illinois 7-5, Fresno State 6-6. It's a MAC versus Mountain West. In these games, Daniel, where I feel like you would think the teams are fairly similar, I always look for who might have more athletes and who plays tougher competition. So for that reason, I'm giving Fresno State the edge here.
This is tough because both teams have lost players to the portal that are really good. Matt Entz taking over as the head coach at the end of next season here. Hammock's done a good job at Northern Illinois. I think they've got a better defense. So that's why I'm taking the Huskies. Fresno State's lost a lot of key guys to the portal on both sides of the ball. Northern Illinois certainly has too, but I think when you look at the rosters top to bottom, Northern Illinois has a better chance.
Well, good job shooting my theory in the foot. We move on to bowl number 10.
The Hawaii Bowl. South Florida versus San Jose State.
A year in which Hawaii does not appear in the Hawaii Bowl, but one of the teams appearing is very used to playing in Hawaii. That is San Jose State, who's 7-5. South Florida is 6-6. You know, Daniel, I do remember my pick for this game. Typically, I would choose South Florida, but I actually like that San Jose State is used to playing in Hawaii, and I do love my guy, Kent Niumatalolo. So I'm going to go with San Jose State to win the Hawaii Bowl. And you're probably going to tell me that I'm wrong.
Field position will be the biggest factor in this game. You want to look at variables that matter when teams are on, similar playing fields. What happens in the field position battle? South Florida, great in this category. San Jose State, one of the worst in the whole country. I'm taking South Florida in the W.
Wow. If my picks for a friendly competition don't mirror yours, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
I know.
At
I
least.
lost track of how many we're off on. So
I think we're off by about half of them so far. And nobody cares about my friendly competition. I don't know why I'm bringing it up. We move on.
The game above Sports Bowl. Pittsburgh versus Toledo.
This is the former Motor City Bowl, former Little Caesars Pizza.com Bowl, former Quick Lane Bowl. It is now whatever we want to call it in Detroit because it'll have a new name in a few years. Pittsburgh at 7-5, taking on Toledo at 7-5. Toledo very used to Ford Field. They have appeared in some MAC championship games at Ford Field. I just can't pick them. I feel like no matter who Pittsburgh's lost, they should have more talent. They had a decent season. I'll go with Pittsburgh in the, let's make sure I get this right, game above Sports Bowl. I got Pitt. What say you, Daniel House?
well, I'm going a pick above Ross here. I'm taking a big upset.
Wow.
This game will be closer than people think.
Well played, by the way. Well played on that. I wish I
Thank
had
you so much.
I don't have a sound effect, but there you go. Good job.
Big fan of Jason Candle. Great offensive mind. Worried about Toledo's run defense, but I think they can hold up enough. I feel like Pitt early in the season, that's a team that was kind of masked by the competition that they were playing. Some really favorable matchups early in the season, and then you saw them fall off. I'm taking Toledo in an upset. They are a plucky team. I know Jason Candle will have them ready to play. The key is the run defense. I feel good enough that they'll be able to slow it down.
The Rate Bowl. Rutgers versus Kansas State.
This used to be the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, but I believe Guaranteed Rate had a bit of a branding change. So we're going with the Rate Bowl. Rutgers at 7-5. Kansas State at 8-4. I just realistically can't pick against Kansas State, who has some of the best uniforms in all of sport. That is why I'm choosing Kansas State.
Sing us a song. You're the Shiano man. I'm going with Shiano. I'm taking Rutgers. They caught stride late in the season. They're picking up momentum. I think their rushing attack, physicality at the line of scrimmage will overwhelm Kansas State. I really think that Rutgers, a lot of young players have stepped up, especially as the season's gone on. They ripped up their defensive scheme. We're more of a man-heavy, aggressive defense. I like how they match up with Kansas State's personnel. Shiano gets the W, Rate Bowl champions. Hopefully they keep the roof closed so it's not slippery.
That was something else when the Gophers played there a few years ago. And I felt like, not that it really matters now, Gophers did end up winning that game over your guy Neil Brown in West Virginia. I definitely thought the Gophers were slipping more than West Virginia, but that was bad. It never rains in Arizona anyways, and then the day it does decide to rain, you open the roof during pregame ceremonies and it gets drenched on, and there's no drainage system. What a dumb idea that was. Okay. That was a non sequitur. We move on.
The 68 Ventures Bowl. Arkansas State versus Bowling Green.
I don't have much to add here. It's a Sun Belt versus MAC matchup. My gut says Arkansas State, which means you'll probably tell me Bowling Green.
Scott Loeffler built a solid team in the MAC, like his offensive style, being able to spread it out, distribute his to all of his playmakers. Arkansas State inefficient in like every defensive category. I'm taking Bowling Green because the difference will be their offensive style versus Arkansas State's inefficient defense.
The Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. Oklahoma versus Navy.
Oklahoma barely eligible at 6-6. They have some nice wins. They also have some really bad losses. They'll take on Navy, who is now 9-3 after winning the Commander-in-Chief trophy by beating Army. They also beat Air Force earlier this year. Typically, I would take Navy. I'm going to take Oklahoma for no other reason other than they'll be slightly more rested, and I think our guy, or at least my guy, Brent Venables, needs a win in the worst way. But this game also screams of Navy just running it down Oklahoma's throats, who particularly doesn't play great defense, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, inconsistent team this year, struggled to stay on schedule offensively. First and second down efficiency stunk. I think Oklahoma can run the ball on Navy, though, sustain some drives, finish them with scores. I'm taking the Sooners. Big game for them. Honestly, you gotta view this bowl game as kind of a leap springboard and beginning of the next season. I view that way with bowls, that like it's the start of the next season, your bowl game. Oklahoma winning this bowl game would be big heading into next season for them.
We are approaching halfway home. We move on to bowl number 15.
The Birmingham Bowl. Georgia Tech versus Vanderbilt.
ACC versus SEC, 7-5 for Georgia Tech, 6-6 for Vanderbilt. When Jerry Kill left the University of Minnesota, I was very sympathetic to him and still really liked the guy. Talked to him for about 30 seconds at Buffalo Wild Wings one day when he was doing a book signing. I'm now over him and hope he never wins another college football game again because I think he's an opportunist who routinely bails on programs for new jobs. Look at his track record since leaving Minnesota. You can't convince me otherwise. He'll probably leave Vanderbilt within the next year or two. Then he'll be somewhere for 2-3 years, and then he'll say he's tired of the job, move on, blah, blah, blah. That's me ripping Jerry Kill. Please, somebody get this to him. Tell him it would behoove him to stay in one place for more than 2 years. So for all those reasons, although props to Diego Pavia, who when we saw him at Huntington Bank Stadium a few years ago, Daniel, looked legitimately like one of the worst quarterbacks ever to start for a legitimate college football team. He has really turned things around, maybe just because the talent around him is better. But I am not going to take Vanderbilt for the Jerry Kill reasons. I'm going to go with Georgia Tech, who put up a nice fight against Georgia in rivalry week. Did I fillet Jerry Kill enough, or should I add a little bit more because I can?
I think you can throw a little more gas igniter on there. I think maybe.
I also think say what you want about PJ, but upon, PJ getting hired here and him crying foul, acting like, everything at the University of Minnesota is bad. That was also not a good look. You willingly left. They didn't fire you. And at that point, the university has every right to change head coaches and do whatever they want with your staff. And I don't know how much better the PJ Fleck regime has been than the Jerry Kill regime. I think it's been a fair amount better. I hesitate to say significant, but everything about it since that day forward, and I just really don't like the look of bailing on New Mexico. That was like the third time he said he was done, and then months later he surfaces again coaching. I just really do not like that. However, I know he has legitimate health issues. I am not wishing anything bad on him in that regard. I hope he has a long, healthy, happy life. I just really wish he would quit bailing on situations. All right, what do you got?
One of my low-key favorite bowl matchups. This is going to be a solid game. Brent Key's run game schemes, how he features his playmakers, I really like it. Georgia Tech's run game creativity is something that I think will be the difference versus Vanderbilt. I'm taking Georgia Tech.
The AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Texas Tech versus Arkansas.
We'll speed through a few of these after my 2.5-minute filibuster ripping Jerry Kill. Let's hit that one again.
The AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Texas Tech versus Arkansas.
That gives me an opportunity to thank Mr. A.J. Frederickson of Score North for doing the voiceovers for all of these bowl games once again this year. Texas Tech 8-4, Arkansas 6-6. It's tough because when you look at 6-6 teams from the SEC, I would say that is fairly comparable to an 8-4 team out of the Big 12. This is a bit of a toss-up for me. What say you, Mr. Daniel House?
Should be a good game. Texas Tech secondary has been pretty erratic this year. Arkansas is an offense that stays on schedule and sustains drives. I think Arkansas will throw the ball with success versus the Red Raiders secondary, and that's going to lead them to a victory. I'm taking Arkansas over Texas Tech.
The DirecTV Holiday Bowl. Syracuse versus Washington State.
Syracuse quietly had a really nice season at 9-3, helped Clemson get to the college football playoff. That's undeniable as they helped Clemson get into the ACC title game, and Clemson eventually winning. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. They'll take on Washington State out of the Pac-12, the two-team Pac-12 at 8-4. Washington State at one point quietly was in the mix for a college football playoff spot and really struggled down the stretch. I like Syracuse. I think it's two teams heading in different directions at the moment here in the Holiday Bowl.
Fran Brown, amazing in the first year. Syracuse, very good job of building their roster this offseason, and that's why they're having success. I think Syracuse will put up a lot of points versus Washington State's defense. Their defense has been inconsistent versus the run-in pass. The Orange can be explosive and efficient in both categories. I'm taking Syracuse.
We move on.
The SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Florida versus Nebraska.
What do you got, Daniel?
Florida versus Nebraska. I think
That's me just messing with you. That's from NCAA 2025. We move on.
Okay.
The real SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Texas A&M versus USC.
Hat
Okay.
tip to AJ Frederickson, who thought we should mess with you and just throw in a fake bowl game from NCAA football 25.
I'm like, that's an error.
Could you? I saw you typing. Were you doing a Control F? To see
No,
what
I was
screwed up?
going through my list going, what in the world did I miss here? I'm kind of been like transfer portal heavy I'm like, did I miss a detail here?
Nope, just a little good intermission to make us both laugh. And it's only for you and I, because most people listening probably thought that was incredibly dumb. Let's hit this one more time, and then we'll do the real review.
The real SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Texas A&M versus USC.
A couple of brand names here in what has quietly always been a pretty decent bowl game. They used to play it on that first Saturday. It was always kind of the highlight of the first Saturday of Bowl Mania. Texas A&M versus USC. Texas A&M, incredibly athletic and physical. I lean Texas A&M in what will continue to be a very rocky tenure early on for Lincoln Riley at USC.
Texas A&M, explosive, fast, physical team, like you said, built well. Mike Elko will get that thing cooking down there. Texas A&M's passing attack versus USC secondary, that's a differentiating factor in this game. The Trojans have been going through it all year in the back end. I'm taking the Aggies. I just think A&M has a better roster top to bottom.
The Wasabi Fenway Bowl. UConn versus North Carolina.
North Carolina at 6-6. They welcome in Bill Belichick and his entire family. They will not be coaching that game, taking on UConn, an independent who is 8-4. You say, wow, 8-4 UConn, that's pretty nice, until you look at the schedule and realize they played a bunch of also-rans, but still good for Jim Mora Jr. Is that who's there? Who's coaching that team? That's Jim Mora Jr., right? Yeah. Good for him. I like him. I like UConn, but I'm going to pick against them and go with North Carolina.
Freddie Kitchens coaching the bowl game as an interim. We'll see what happens and what personnel UNC has available by the time this game's played. I'm looking at one thing, third down in this game. UConn's offense struggles on third down, while UNC's defense is great in this category. That's the separating factor. Tar Heels win the bowl game.
The Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Boston College versus Nebraska.
Another bowl game I have always kind of liked. I don't love when you play college football games at baseball stadiums during the year, but for bowl games, whatever, it's kind of fun. I like the setting. Boston College taking on Nebraska. Boston College 7-5, Nebraska 6-6. That's an ACC versus a Big Ten matchup. I really don't know what to think. Boston College started off really well. It was rougher for them in the back half of the year. You know, Nebraska, you just never quite know what you're going to get, but I think Matt Rule will jumpstart the 2025 season by getting a bowl game victory over Boston College.
Nebraska has been going through it. Tony White left for Florida State, lost some key personnel on that side of the ball and in some other spots as well. Should be a close game. I think Boston College is better along the line of scrimmage, especially from an O-line standpoint, and that's what I'm giving the edge to Bill O'Brien. And the Fighting Boston College Eagles get the W.
Also, low-key, really good uniforms for Boston College.
The Isleta New Mexico Bowl. Louisiana versus TCU.
Do we know is New Mexico Bowl, or is the New Mexico Bowl still giving out like that piece of pottery as the trophy? I always thought that was one of the, I love when bowl games embrace what the trophy is, and we're going to get there, I think, with the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm assuming you've seen what their trophy is this year.
Buddy, if Minnesota gets a bowl game, I will hand make a piece of pottery to give out. I'll get that thing in the kiln, baby.
I think that's what it is. Isn't it a piece of pottery? I'm almost positive. At least it was at one point. It was at one point. Louisiana out of the Sun Belt at 10-3. TCU at 8-4 out of the Big 12. Good matchup. I'm going to lean TCU. They had a nice bounce back year after appearing in the national title game a few years back. 8-4 this year. Again, they've lost a couple players to the portal, but I just think talent is probably more on the TCU side, so I'll go with Sonny Dykes and TCU.
Louisiana flew under the radar this year. Solid team, good multiplicity and versatility in their defense. TCU's team speed's better, though. The only way Louisiana has a shot is if they can run the ball well. I don't think they'll be able to do it well enough. TCU gets the W.
The Pop-Tarts Bowl, Iowa State versus Miami.
Did you see the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy this year? It was all the rage on the X machine yesterday. I know you're busy.
I did see it.
Okay,
I
yeah,
did
it's a
see
full, it's a fully functioning toaster, which I think for the commitment to the bit is great. There's no way when they try and plug that thing in 20 years it will still work. However, this bowl gets it. They understand that these games are exhibitions. They are meant to be fun. Results matter, but they also really don't matter. Good on the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Iowa State, Miami. This is a tremendous matchup. Iowa State and Miami, as of right now, we expect a good amount of players to still play. I think the game is going to be meaningful to both as they both lost opportunities at playing in better bowl games, perhaps even the college football playoff as the season went on. I don't know. I have a weird dislike for Iowa State, and it has nothing to do with the university and the players. I just really don't like that they constantly wear black uniforms, even though that has nothing to do with their color scheme. So for that reason alone, I'm going to take Miami.
We differ here. This is kind of a hot take. I think this game could be a blowout. Iowa State can't stop the run. Mario Cristobal, he'll have run schemes ready for this game. Miami pounds the rock, really controls this thing at the line of scrimmage and leaves with a convincing W over Iowa State.
Okay, but at least we got the game right. We're both taking Miami.
Correct.
You just don't think it'll be all that close. Okay.
No.
All right. We have a new bowl name alert. There's actually plenty of them, but I'll call this one out. Snoop Dogg in the house.
The Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, Miami of Ohio versus Colorado State.
You know what? I wonder what we're doing here sometimes with some of these bowl games, but you know what? That's the hilarity of the system. Miami of Ohio at 8-5 out of the MAC. Colorado State at 8-4 out of the Mountain West. A nice year for Colorado State, who gets overshadowed. Always in that state to Colorado, but more so now that Deion Sanders is at the University of Colorado. For now, I'll take Colorado State over Miami of Ohio, mainly just because that Chuck Martin annoys me. So I'm going to take Colorado State.
This won't be an aesthetically pleasing game. And I'm still going to watch it because that's just how I am. So hard for these MAC teams that lose guys in the portal to play these bowl games.
Yes.
I mean, they are just getting decimated. Both teams have inefficient areas. Miami struggles to finish drives, and I think that's a huge factor when you look at these bowl games, especially with talent missing. So I'm taking Colorado State to get the W.
The Go Bowling Military Bowl, East Carolina versus NC State.
East Carolina out of the American at 7-5, NC State at 6-6 out of the ACC. I will go with NC State again. My analysis never nearly as deep as yours. I just tend to favor the teams that play better competition, play in better conferences, because they tend, not always, not exclusively, they tend to just have better players, even if they have to dip into the depth to do that. So I will take NC State.
East Carolina really leans on the run game, staying on schedule in that area, being ahead of the sticks. NC State's played the run well this year. I think NC State will get East Carolina backed up, force them into a few mistakes. NC State wins the game.
The Valero Alamo Bowl, BYU versus Colorado.
We believe that Hunter and Sanders will play in this football game. This is a actual Big 12 versus Big 12 matchup in this bowl game. BYU and Colorado. BYU at 10-2, Colorado at 9-3. These are two pretty good programs at this point. BYU's been a pretty good program for a long time. I think Colorado should win this, but to be different, I think BYU is going to play the disrespect card. BYU also a pretty good football team. I think BYU is going to find a way. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I think BYU wins.
I just don't think BYU's been tested as much this year, just from a schedule standpoint. They've shown some weaknesses in a few of their games. I'm banking on a big day from Shedeur and Travis in their final college matchup. Deion will have his guys ready to play. It sounds like everybody's going to go for the bowl game for the most part. Colorado's team speed is going to be the differentiating factor. Buffs get the W over BYU.
I'm going to attempt to do a very quick on-the-fly voiceover. Are you ready, Daniel House?
I'm ready.
All right, let me try this. How can I pull this off? I think I can do this. Okay, here we go. Bowl number 26.
The Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. Marshall.
Louisiana Tech. Dang it, missed it. Louisiana Tech is taking the place of Marshall.
The Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. Marshall versus Army.
They will take on Army and get the tough task. Louisiana Tech will take on Army getting the tough task of an Army team that just took one on the chin to their chief rival in Navy. I think Army wins this one by 1,000, Daniel House.
Louisiana Tech has major eye discipline problems, and that's not a recipe for success when you're playing Army. I'm taking Army in a convincing W in the Independence Bowl.
And just to clear the air, everybody's pretty much aware, but Marshall had to drop out of that bowl game because ravaged in the transfer portal. We move on.
The Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. Iowa versus Missouri.
I don't know what to make of this one. Iowa, you always think, how can they possibly score and beat a team like Missouri, but they play really good defense. I don't know, Daniel. I guess Missouri. Missouri 9-3 out of the SEC. They've played really tough competition pretty much every year. I lean Missouri.
Taking the surprise pick here, I'm going with Iowa. Missouri has a big problem finishing drives. Iowa's defense is good in this category, preventing points in those situations. I view this as the separating factor along with Iowa's offensive line play. I think they'll be more physical at the point of attack, be able to run the ball, shorten it up, control the game, be better on special teams. Iowa's always ready to play. Fundamentally sound squad. Missouri is one of these teams you look at last year. The reason why they had so much success was being propped up by a lot of takeaways that they were able to get. I think this game, if Iowa can take care of the ball, they'll end up being victorious, and I believe that will be the case.
This next bowl matchup features some blue bloods who are down just a little bit and some brand names in college football.
The ReliaQuest Bowl. Alabama versus Michigan.
I feel like Alabama wins this one easily. Michigan struggles to score. Their talent definitely down this year compared to years previous. Also, kind of a fun note, it seems like every other year now, Alabama meets Michigan in a bowl game. This is, I think I saw the note, the third time since like 2017. They also played on New Year's Day. They've played in the college football playoff, and now they will play again here in the ReliaQuest Bowl, a.k.a. what used to be the Outback Bowl. I think Alabama wins easily.
Tough game to predict because of all the opt-outs. Michigan really peaked later in the season. I thought they started to find their stride, particularly with Wink Martindale learning about like how to call games, how to teach certain things at the college level with the field margins being different. I thought their zone drops were better as the season progressed. I know they won't have some of their defensive personnel. The guys declaring for the draft. Jalen Milroe's playing as of now, and I think QB play will be the difference in this game when you look at Alabama versus Michigan. I'm taking Alabama.
Up next, one of my favorite bowls, and quietly a very historic bowl that has been around for quite some time. It is
the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Louisville versus Washington.
I'll take Louisville. I just think they're a lot more explosive on offense. Washington struggles on the offensive side of the ball. They've had some opt-outs and transfers, so I'll go with Louisville begrudgingly because I don't love that program, but I think it's Louisville.
This is a sneaky game against two great coaches. Brom is really good when he has extra time to prep. Washington's limiting explosives at a high rate, has a good secondary, one that was pretty young, and they'll be able to sort of build off of that and springboard into the next season. However, I just think Louisville's more dynamic from top to bottom, has more talent across its roster. So I am going with Louisville over Washington.
The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. South Carolina versus Illinois.
South Carolina comes in at 9-3. They have a legitimate claim to be in the college football playoff, but as we know by now, they are not in. They'll take on Illinois at 9-3. Illinois has 3, I would say, pretty good losses. 2 are really good, and 1 is to the Gophers, which you would say is excusable, but they're a Gopher win away from being 10-2 and having a really nice year. I think South Carolina should win this game, but for some reason, my heart and brain keeps telling me Illinois. So I'm going with Illinois and Brett Bielema to get a really nice win in a nice bowl game.
South Carolina is a really good football team. They were able to beat Bama. They maybe would have made it into the college football playoff. Dynamic pass rush, lots of talent across the roster. Love their team speed on both sides of the ball. Built their roster well, using the portal wisely, adding productive players. I think the Gamecocks pass rush is the X factor in this game. They're able to control the line of scrimmage. Illinois is not able to run the ball well enough this year. The running back room struggling to break tackles. You have to be able to run the ball against an SEC team like this to shorten up the game, be able to sustain drives, control that clock, and be productive with your possession. So therefore, I'm taking South Carolina to get the W in the Citrus Bowl.
Kinder's Texas Bowl. Baylor versus LSU.
I don't know what Kinder's is, but perhaps that is why they are spending money to be the sponsor of this bowl game. I'll take Brian Kelly, who's just really happy for his family to be in Baton Rouge, and he'll get Baylor, which I think, much like Penn State, is a despicable college football program, and I will never pick them or cheer for them to win anything for the most part. So I'll go with LSU.
This will be a close game, closer than people think. Baylor runs the ball with more consistency than LSU. Tigers also have a problem when it comes to finishing drives. That's something that I really look at in these bowl games. It can be a huge factor. Are you able to get maximum amount of points when you have the opportunity to do so? LSU's had some trouble in that area. That's not a recipe for success in a game where I feel like the talent is pretty close. When you look at the roster from top to bottom, pending opt-outs and transfer portal moves. So with that being said, I am taking Baylor in this game over LSU. This should be an entertaining one. Highly recommend tuning in.
I won't hold that pick against you, I promise.
The Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. Duke versus Ole Miss.
2 9-3 teams, Duke out of the ACC, Ole Miss out of the SEC. If Ole Miss is engaged, if they're engaged and care about being there, I will take Ole Miss.
Man, this is the one that got away from me. I mean, Ole Miss is just so talented from top to bottom on this roster. Just had a couple of dud games, particularly that Kentucky one, which caused them to blow their opportunity for the CFP. It's funny because we always talked about Ole Miss's offense being explosive and dynamic. This was the year their defense was really good and their offense maybe wasn't up to the standard that you thought it would be. So we'll see who plays in this game, how engaged everybody is, like you said. Duke can't stay on schedule offensively. Ole Miss is great at knocking teams off track. They'll be in some longer down and distances. Duke will be. So I think that breeds the possibility of having some takeaway opportunities for Ole Miss, and I think that will be a big factor. Ole Miss's defense is underappreciated. They've got a good front seven. I'm taking the Rebels.
The Serve Pro First Responder Bowl. North Texas versus Texas State.
The American Athletic versus the Fun Belt. Texas State out of the Fun Belt. North Texas out of the American. I don't know, Daniel. I don't even really care to wager a prediction, but if I had to guess, I would go with Texas State.
Two teams that have lost a lot of talent in the portal. Who the heck knows what will happen in this game? I'm leaning on the fact G.J. Kinney is a good coach and he'll find a way. Texas State was also the more efficient team from top to bottom when you look at the course of the season. Despite having some personnel out, I think Texas State's done a better job of building their roster top to bottom, but don't hold me to that. I think this game is going to be one that is just like flip a coin based on who's playing that day and what happens.
The Duke's Mayo Bowl. Minnesota versus Virginia Tech.
Aside from the day of this game, I think all bowl games like this and any bowl game we've talked about and another one that we will, I think all these bowl games should be played December 31st or prior. The Duke's Mayo Bowl used to be for some reason. It's not. I know they like to stretch the season and have bowl games leading up to playoff games and such, so I get it. I just don't really like it. Kind of a fun matchup if you're a Minnesota fan like I am, and Daniel covers the Minnesota Golden Gophers for those finding this podcast that have wondered what a few of the inside jokes are. That might explain some of them to you. I don't know. Virginia Tech has played a lot of really good teams close. PJ Fleck, however, at the University of Minnesota, 5-0, 5-0 in bowl games. At some point, he's going to lose. I think this is an opportunity to lose. However, I think Minnesota has the better quarterback play. So I'm going to go with Minnesota and PJ Fleck to get doused with the mayo in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I like the Gophers. What say you, Daniel House?
Well, Virginia Tech's going through some stuff. Fired a DC, O-line coach, strength coach. They're losing good players to the portal everywhere. O-line was something that was a big problem as well. Opt-outs could be coming. Kyron Drones, quarterback, announced he's coming back. Pass blocking was the big issue for them this year. That's why I think the Gophers D-line will have a big day, especially since Virginia Tech is a bad early down offense. The only way Virginia Tech has a chance is if they're able to run the ball. Minnesota's been pretty tight in that area throughout the season. I don't think that Virginia Tech will be able to do enough in the ground game, but if that is my preface for this game, if Minnesota cannot stop the run, Virginia Tech will have a chance. However, I'm taking the Gophers to get the W.
The Bahamas Bowl, presented by Atlantis Resorts. Buffalo versus Liberty.
Buffalo at 8-4 out of the MAC, out of the Conference USA, is Liberty at 8-3. Again, Daniel, I've mentioned this a few times. I just think when you have even matchups like this and we don't know who's coming and who's going, I think you just got to lean to the team that plays in the better conference and more than likely has better talent. So I'm taking Liberty.
Liberty lost a lot of talent in the portal. Buffalo has more personnel available to compete, in my opinion. Just looking at, potential projection of who's available, I'm taking Buffalo, and that pick is based on who I think has a better roster at this moment in time on December 16th as we record this podcast, because matchups like this are very challenging to predict.
We have 4 games left to get to. It is the first round of the college football playoff. But before I do that, I need to thank my friends at Beans Coffee Company who have been supporting Minnesota Sports Chat for over a few years now. Why do they do it? Because they love Minnesota sports just like we do. They also love college football, and that's the theme of today's podcast, kind of stepping outside of the format a little bit. With roasts and blends for everybody's palate, Beans Coffee Company truly is the place to be looking for this holiday season for that perfect gift. I know Christmas is right around the corner, but get those orders in. I know you'll see people after the holidays as well. Or if you're just looking to give yourself a nice little gift, please do so. It's the best small batch coffee around and Santa approved. I don't know if it actually is, but I'm speaking on behalf of Santa. Coffeebybeans.com is the website, coffeebybeans.com. Promo code SportsChat will save you some cash at checkout. Again, that's promo code SportsChat. If you like this podcast, or you like me, or you like coffee, please give Beans Coffee Company a try. It's a great way to support this podcast, but also a great way just to have some fantastic coffee. Again, promo code SportsChat at coffeebybeans.com. All right, Daniel House, we will take these games in order of being played. We start with Friday, this upcoming Friday, Windiana at Notre Dame.
The college football playoff first round. Number 7 Notre Dame hosting number 10 Indiana.
I love the Indiana story. They have maximized their schedule. They beat literally everybody outside of the one team that you can definitively say is probably a better football team than they are. I just like that Notre Dame is at home, and I don't think that Indiana has played the best competition. They took advantage of their schedule. They did what they were supposed to do. I am so happy that they are here. It is really cool, but I'll take Notre Dame to win this game in round 1 of the college football playoff as I send my coffee flying.
That's an omen there. The football gods are telling you made a mistake.
Okay.
I'm going with the surprise pick here. I think this will be a really good game. Each team's been playing really efficient on both sides of the ball. I know you mentioned the schedule for Indiana, and I think that's been a factor. I think the Ohio State game, when you go back and look at it, a couple special teams errors there really kind of threw that game off the rails for them. So if they can clean that up, they should be okay. I think the turnover battle and the run games will be the biggest difference in this matchup. I'm banking on Indiana getting a key takeaway. The differentiating matchup in this game is I like Curtis Rourke as a quarterback better than Riley Leonard. That's why I'm taking Indiana, just because they're able to run the ball, get a key takeaway, and come out with a close victory against Notre Dame. And Cignetti will have his guys ready. They've been preparing for this game for a while, and they're hearing everybody talk about how they didn't play anybody all year. I just know that the coaching here will be really, really good.
The college football playoff first round. Number 6 Penn State hosting number 11 SMU.
So another team that's been told you didn't play anybody, you probably shouldn't be here, to stick with those themes, is SMU. I would say absolutely they deserve to be there because you can't punish them for losing in their conference championship game. They've lost 2 games, I believe, by a combined 6 points. Maybe it was 10, but they were both one-score games. Penn State should win this game, and they should win it easily. I absolutely believe that. I also believe that for some reason, James Franklin just really struggles in big games when he's taking on big-time opponents. I don't think SMU is the biggest-time opponent, but it's a college football playoff game. I love the chaos. I love that not everybody in Happy Valley is behind James Franklin, and I think it's going to get cranked up just a little bit, Daniel House. I'm going to take SMU in the upset here because they have also been told you don't belong, and I also don't believe Penn State is all that good, Daniel. So I'm going to go with SMU.
You know what? This was a tough one for me because I do feel like SMU has some pass rush talent. I like their overall top to bottom speed as a team. They've definitely made that a trait, something they value. They added a lot of productive players in the transfer portal. I think that's the key to success. Is what, not just volume of what you're bringing in, but how productive were those players. And SMU's done that. That's put them in a position to be in this spot. However, I think the environment at Penn State's going to be absolutely unbelievable. Like, talk about hard to communicate. You got whiteout environment, people going nuts. You got to try to communicate. SMU has to come out and make a statement right away. They got to try to take the crowd out of the game. If they don't do that, it could tumble out of control fast. Drew Aller, Penn State's quarterbacks, made a ton of progress from a play extension, footwork standpoint, having his eyes and his feet in sync, being able to extend, step away, make plays. I think the key theme in this game is first and second down. The team that is better in that area will end up winning. Penn State will get SMU backed up, and Mix looks to come away with a key takeaway that ends up changing the tide of the game. Tom Allen really mixes things up defensively. I think that could give SMU some problems. I'm taking Penn State over SMU.
I'm at least encouraged you didn't stomp all over that pick. It made me believe there's a puncher's chance. So I'm encouraged by that. We move on.
The college football playoff first round. Number 5 Texas hosting number 12 Clemson.
I think Clemson will battle more than people think, but I think, and we'll talk about this afterwards, I just think that Texas is too good and we'll find a way to win here since it's not Georgia.
I like Texas in this game. Clemson's defense, they've been susceptible to allowing big plays, especially on the ground. Longhorns' defense is elite, will play a big factor in coming away with a victory. I think it's a big game incoming for Quintravion Wisner, the running back. Texas is going to be able to run the football in this game, come out early, and just really try to assert themselves in that area. Then you got Sark with the ability of those wide receivers and the speed they have on the perimeter to be able to set some stuff up off play action. Clemson's run defense has been a liability throughout the season, and Sark will definitely have schematic ways to exploit that. Texas wins over Clemson.
The college football playoff first round. Number 8 Ohio State hosting number 9 Tennessee.
I think this is a fantastic matchup. I'm a little bummed I won't get to see a ton of it because I'm actually headed to a concert on Saturday night, but I will record it and whip through it after the fact. I'll give Ohio State the advantage here because they're at home. I think more than likely they'll be upset about that Michigan debacle a few weeks back. Tennessee they haven't looked as good the back half of the year. They struggle offensively at times. I think Ohio State at home will find a way to get it done, but I would not be surprised at all if Tennessee wins that game and the hot seat under Ryan Day is even hotter. But I'm going to go with Ohio State.
Should be a really good game. Tennessee's run defense is very good, one of the better ones in the country. I think they'll be able to neutralize that area of the game, force Will Howard to have to make some key throws. I think he makes a couple of mistakes based on some coverage picture changes. Tennessee has an elite pass rush. It will help them in the CFP. They're able to run the ball quite well. I think, that might be the biggest factor that people are sleeping on, is just the ability of Dylan Sampson to really run the football effectively. Don't sleep on the balls. I mean, this is a team that I think has the elements of good defense, ability to run the football. Those variables, they carry you in those playoff type of settings, especially when you're in a potentially colder environment. You look at defense and run games, those things translate. I am taking Tennessee over Ohio State. Maybe a surprise pick, but I think Tennessee, their team matchup-wise, lines up nicely with Ohio State.
Yeah, and the way the teams are seeded, I don't really think it would be much of an upset at all. And I'm a closeted Tennessee supporter. I don't go out of my way to cheer for them, but I always like it when they're good. So that wouldn't make me too disappointed at all. Okay, Daniel, we've done it. Congratulations. We made it through 39 games. We won't predict games that we don't know, even though we made our predictions here, but we don't know what the next round of the college football playoff will be. So we'll let that part go. I will ask you, after I give mine, to give me your prediction for the national champion, maybe even the national championship game. I will tell you that sports are cinema. They're theater. They're an escape from the outside world. And they often love, whether scripted or not scripted, Daniel House, they do love to tell a good story. And the good story here is Act 3, the encore, Georgia and Texas, in which Texas will not allow a team to beat them for the third time this year. Texas is your national champion over Georgia. What say you?
Oh, I tell you, this is tough because matchups each week vary. I feel like Oregon is my clear-cut pick to go all the way. I think they win the whole thing just because their defense is able to put them in a position to compete every single week along the line of scrimmage. They're loaded in the secondary. I like their two backs and Jordan James and Whittington. They're able to really do whatever they need to do to win the football game, whether that's run and pass. Tez Johnson's back. That gives them a nice element. On the other end of the bracket, I'm going to make a surprise pick here. I think it's going to be Penn State. And I say that because they have the nicest path coming out of here. They've got SMU at home in a whiteout environment the first game. They got Boise State on the road. I think they match up well with them to exploit some things schematically. And then, it'll come down to whether they can potentially knock off Georgia or Notre Dame. I feel like they can. I think that there's some things that quarterback play-wise, Drew Aller is playing at a high level right now. I thought that game versus Oregon was really good. I thought that there were moments where Penn State could have potentially asserted and gained control of the matchup. Abdul Carter is such a dynamic weapon on the defensive side of the ball. They can move him around and do a lot of different things. I know it's surprising, but I think it's going to be a Big Ten matchup in the championship game, Oregon versus Penn State.
So you are going with Act 2 of Oregon and Penn State. I am going with Part 3, Act 3 encore of Georgia and Texas. So we're kind of like-minded there. We're kind of like-minded in some repeat matchups.
We are, and I also think that Indiana's the team to watch out for. I still think, despite the fact that people are saying they played an easier schedule, keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on them. They will be ready to play.
Well, and I will acknowledge they did play an easier schedule, but they also murdered those teams. It's not like they were escaping those
teams.
That's the thing. They were murdering those teams.
They totally destroyed those teams. They did what they should do in those matchups. So I would say just be cognizant of Indiana here. Don't sleep on them.
For the Gophers fans, Daniel House, what is at gophersguru.com? I know I had just scanned it recently, talking about some of the stuff going into the offseason. I know there's a lot there. Gophers landed like 78 players out of the transfer portal yesterday, so I know there's a lot there.
If you can see my face, man, it's been a wild, last 48 hours.
Nice plug for people who listen to watch on YouTube.
48 hours, man. It's been pretty crazy. There's a few of the analysis pieces out right now, working through spreading them out so that people can consume them at their own leisure. So keep an eye on the analysis articles coming. You go to the transfer portal tracker and the website. It'll give you who's committed, who's departed, analysis on each of them as they're posted. We'll be definitely unpacking a lot of the things going on with the transfer portal. It's just beginning, folks. So subscribe, gophersguru.com, $5 a month gets you access.
Well, we did it. We made it through all 39 bowl games. We differed on a lot of games, but how could you not? There are so many bowl games. There's no way we could agree on all of these games. That is Daniel House from gophersguru.com. He is Daniel House on the X Machine as well. I am the Ross Brendel on the X Machine. This is Minnesota Sports Chat. You can find us on YouTube. Just launched on YouTube finally a few months back. Also Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you tell your family and friends all about this pod. Maybe send a link. And if you watch this and you're not a Minnesota sports fan, I do appreciate it. Still like and subscribe anyways. Occasionally we do some off-the-wall topics like we just did. And I got to get Judd Zolgad back to talk some Law & Order. Complete non sequitur. But this new season of the original Law & Order, very good, Daniel House. It's been fantastic. Maybe not as fantastic as this pod, but it's been good. That is the Bull Bonanza with Daniel House from gophersguru.com. This has been Minnesota Sports Chat. I'll be back again real soon.